I created a survey. 402 dancers responded, and I spent weeks digging into their answers. Why? Because Rejections in Tango shape how we invite, how we feel, and how we experience Tango in general. I wanted to really understand it. Not just the numbers, but the stories behind it. Curious to see what I found out? Let's have a look together. Welcome to Good Night Tango, your channel about tango in real life. I'm Christos, I'm dancing tango for 9 years now, and for the last 4 years I'm writing about that in my blog. This video is the second video in a series of 4 videos exploring the results from the survey about rejections in tango. What we already saw in the first video that you probably will see in a link up there is the first presentation of the results of the survey. And what we will see in this video is how we are influenced, what influences our view or the meaning that we assign to rejection. The next video will be about what shapes our emotional reaction, and the last one will be about rejection and our Milonga experiences, how rejections affect our Milonga experiences and what can we do about that. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. Before we dive into the question about what shapes our view of rejection, I would like also to have a look on the question about how personal we feel rejection, how personal do we take rejections. I want to remind you the question was how personal do you take rejection, and it was scored on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being not personal at all and 5 being very personal. The question was asked again 2 times, one for known dancers and one for the unknown dancers, meaning known dancer is somebody that you know from classes, maybe a friend, somebody that you already danced with them a couple of times at least. An unknown dancer is somebody that you haven't danced before, or maybe you danced once and you don't remember, something like that. So in the analysis that you will see further down the road, there are some groupings that I made in order to do some cross-referencing in the different variables. And 2 of them that you need to know is about the experience, the less experience and the more experience. I grouped the people that answered in terms of how long they dance to people that are dancing less than 6 years and people that are dancing more than 6 years into 2 groups so that I can do some analysis based on the experience. And also the same happened with the age group. I grouped the people that are less than 45 and older than 45 into 2 different groups. So you can see the terminology older and younger. You can know that the limit is 45 years. Having that in mind, this was used for the t-test analysis that we will see in the next slides. So let's see how personal rejection feels. How personal do we take rejection by an unknown dancer? How this was classified between the different sectors, demographic sectors. You can see that we have, in general, an average that is around 2 in both cases. And you can see this is the total average, 2.01. And in the scale of 1 to 5, the other sectors like male and female dancers, leaders and followers, younger and older, less and more experienced, are pretty much close to each other. So I'm running the t-test to see if there is any statistical difference between the groups here in the responses. There was no difference in the responses that we see. There was no statistically significant difference observed. And now moving on to the known dancer, how personal do we take rejection from a known dancer? We can see that the average here was 2.42, was a bit higher than the unknown dancer. From the unknown dancer. But what is more interesting is that we see a difference between the responses from the male and female leaders, female dancers. You can see that male dancers responded with 2.18 in average. How personally do they take? And female average was 2.64. And this test here proved to have a statistically significant difference in the 2 averages here. Similarly, we have an observation of a difference in the leaders and followers. In this case, I didn't take into account the both role dancers because the t-test analysis only allows for 2 groups to be compared. In this case, again, there was a statistically significant difference. And similarly, also, we can see there is a difference in the average in the younger and older group of dancers. and we can see also that the tests prove to have a statistically significant difference between these two. When we speak about statistically significant differences, this means that there is a correlation between the two variables. So it means that on average, male dancers, for example, scored less on taking it personally from known dancers, taking rejection personally from known dancers, and female dancers on average scored higher. And this difference that we see between the two scores is important, is something that we see as a trend in the responses. It's not just by accident. And here, for example, in the experience between the less experienced and the more experienced dancers, we can see that there is a difference, but this from the test doesn't prove to be statistically significant in this case. Now, moving on to how the different variables that we saw affect the rejection, the personally feeling of rejection that we have, you can see the answers of the male dancers compared with the answers of the female dancers, and you can see the distribution between the different degrees of personal feeling. I mean, how personal do we take the rejection? You can see that in the male group, we have a bigger group of answering to the scale of 1 and 2, and this is then moved towards the 3 or 4 in the case of female dancers. A similar pattern we can see also if we observe the differences between the role of leaders and followers, and you can understand why it was shown as statistically significant difference between the two roles. And similarly also there is a trend we can see in the younger dancers, and we can see also a trend in the older dancers. This means that younger male leaders tend to take rejection less personally. It's probably because they think she must have missed a cabeceo. All 5 of them. Moving on to the views of rejection, the question that we had here was when someone declines a dance invitation, it most often means, and then people were selecting from a list of options. In order to do the analysis here, I selected each different group of answers for each different view, and I ran an analysis for each selected view with the different demographic groups. So you can see each different view with different demographic groups. I will not present the results from all the different cross-references that I did for this analysis, but I will only present the results that have some interest because they have proven some statistically significant difference. So moving on, let's see what is the situational view, the first view that I analyzed here. The situational view mean that they are tired, they need a break, they don't like the music, or it's not good for a good fit for the music or something like that. So it's not something that has to do with them personally or something else. It's an interpretation that has to do just purely on the situation. Also, the situation might mean that they just received an email with the presentation that you see, so they're checking it out. And if you're wondering how you can do that, there will be a link in the description where you can sign up, and I will send you the whole presentation of all the 4 videos together in the end of the 4th video. So after the 4th video is published, you will receive an email with the presentation that we see here. So without further ado, if you like, you can go into the description and sign up for the presentation. Moving on, let's see what kind of demographic groups influence or what kind of relations did they find between different demographics and the situational view. First of all, there was a statistically significant difference between the genders and oops, there is a mistake in the presentation here. I should have highlighted both together with the leader follower, so it's in the same group with the role here, but anyway. So there was a statistically significant difference between the genders in terms of the situational view and also between the roles observed. Again, also there was a statistically significant difference observed in the different age groups. And here you can see, for example, that in the people below 45 years old, 58% of them answered that rejection is probably situational, and this percentage is reduced a lot when we go to 65 plus dancers. They are answering that 38% of them see the rejection as situational. So there is a statistically significant difference in the selection of situational as a view between the different age groups. And the same is also observed in the experience. It's not very obvious maybe from the graph, but from the test it seems like there is a statistically significant difference between the different experience levels, the different years of experience, and how we see the situational view of rejection. Moving on to the personal view of rejection, which meant that we see rejection as personal. They don't want to dance with us because of something that doesn't have to do with our dance skills. So the rejection doesn't have to do with our dance skills. It just has to do with our personality, with us as a personality. Here we see that the only demographic analysis that proved to have some statistical significant difference in the analysis was the experience. So we see that, for example, the experienced dancers see a lot more often the rejection as personal, and less experienced dancers don't see that as often as personal. So based on my experience, there is a 25% chance that I will take your rejection personally. If you don't want that, hurry up and subscribe now to the channel so we don't have any problems. Now, when it comes to the level as a view of rejection, which means that my dance skill or my level are not enough for them, that was the view for this kind of rejection. We can see that here the age and the experience have some relation. We can see that the more we age here, people that are older in age don't see very often the rejection as part of their level, of their dance skills. Also the same in terms of the experience. The more the experience grows, the less we see people thinking that it is their level that is a reason of the rejection. So the more we age and gain experience, the less we think that we are rejected because our level, and the more we take personally the rejection. I see it for myself too. I mean, as I'm getting older and as I'm getting more experienced, I do think that the level is not the reason for getting rejected, but I'm not sure if this is me getting wiser or if this is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The next view is being selective, which means that the partner that we try to cabeceo are selective. They dance only with specific partners. They're not, or mostly with their friends. In this case, the analysis, we have analysis both for the gender and for the role. You can see the difference between the gender and between the roles. But what is interesting in this analysis is that we see a statistically significant difference between the genders. So the difference that we see here in the selective view in terms of the gender is statistically significant. But when we do the same analysis for the roles, the difference between the three roles here, between the three different options for roles, is not statistically significant. So this is an interesting observation because we see that there is a statistically significant difference between the genders, but not between the different roles. When we include both the double role dancers in the mix, we see that this statistically significant difference between the correlation between the gender and the selective view is disappearing, which probably has to do with the double roles, the double rollers. I think the more people are dancing double role, the less they see, or the less in general people are seeing the rejection as being selective, as the other person being selective. And I think that plays a role. That may be a good argument for people to start dancing in both roles. In terms of the experience influencing the selective view, we can see that there is a statistical significant difference between the experience levels. We can see the difference here. There is not a clear pattern, and I'm very skeptical for this analysis, for these results. But anyway, that is what the statistical analysis showed. We can see that we do see things as selective up to a point. I mean, in 6 to 5, 7 to 15 years, is a peak of people that are looking at rejection as being selective, as the other person being selective, and this then decreases by the more experience that we get. I'm not sure about the -3 and 3 to 6 years of experience, because there were not so many people there, and I'm not really sure about the average that we see here, the percentages that we see here. So I cannot say for sure that these are representative numbers that we see here. Having said all that, and having seen all these correlations and all these cross-references that we did, what are the key takeaways for this video? How are our views shaped in terms of rejection? So the first thing that we can see is that female dancers, followers, tend to take more personal rejections by known dancers. There is not such a thing for unknown dancers. The second trend that we see is that older dancers also take rejections more personally when they come from known dancers. Again, there is not the same attitude when it comes from a known dancer. And finally, we see also that male dancers and leaders view rejection more often as situational than their female dancers or followers. So that's another takeaway here. The second page of the takeaways, we see that the older we get, the less we tend to see rejection as situational. So the more we get older, maybe we see things more personal. Maybe we see this goes together with things being more personal, seeing things more personal. It may also hint into some kind of ageism that we discuss a lot in the tango community. The next observation is that the more experienced we get, the more often we view rejection as personal and not. I think that has to do also with the less that we see it as depending on our level. So the more experience we get, the more confidence we get, the less we think that the rejection has to do with our level, and the more we think that it is personal. So there has to be a meaning, there has to be some meaning, and we have to assign some meaning, and we choose to move from the experience, from the level, for example, or the situational to the personal view in this case. And finally, the older and the more experience we get, the less often we view our level as the reason of rejection. That is something that I already mentioned, and it ties together with the previous observation that we see here. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching the second video. Don't miss the next one. We will discuss what shapes our emotional reactions in rejection. And don't forget to move forward both in the dance floor and in your life. Ciao!